Crash and captivity. The warning klaxons screamed through the cockpit as K.L. Vance wrestled with the controls of his aging cargo hauler, the Drifter's Folly. Debris from what looked like an old satellite field had torn through his starboard thruster, and now the crystalline world of Luminara filled his viewport with alarming speed. "Not like this," he muttered through gritted teeth, fighting the ship's violent descent. "Not on some backwater imperial planet." KL had spent 15 years avoiding exactly this kind of situation, entanglements with governments, militaries, empires. He ran medical supplies to colony worlds, got paid in credits or trade goods, and moved on before anyone could ask his full name. That's how he liked it. Clean. Simple. Alone. The ship hit atmosphere with a bone-rattling shudder. He managed to level out just enough to avoid complete incineration, bringing the Folly down in a screaming arc across purple plains. The landing was more controlled crash than touchdown, tearing a long furrow through crystalline soil that glittered like scattered diamonds. KL sat in the sparking cockpit for a moment, catching his breath, already mentally calculating repair costs he couldn't afford. Through the cracked viewport, he watched dust settle, and then he saw them. 24 figures in form-fitting silver armor, moving with liquid precision across the plain toward his ship. "Fantastic," he muttered. The boarding ramp was half-jammed, but he forced it open with a kick. The moment he emerged, weapons raised to aim at his chest. The soldiers moved like dancers, their armor catching the light of Luminara's violet sun. At their center stood a tall woman whose uniform bore marks of rank he didn't recognize. "K.L. Vance," she said, not asking. "Independent courier. Your vessel violated Imperial airspace." "My vessel violated physics when that debris hit me. I wasn't exactly steering for your planet." The commander's expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Nevertheless, you're here. The Empress has been notified." "Great. Can she notify someone to fix my ship while she's at it?" A ripple of tension went through the soldiers at his irreverence, but the commander simply gestured. "You'll come with us." They didn't bind his hands, which surprised him, but the escort was firm. They led him across the plain to a transport shuttle that barely seemed to touch the ground as it glided. Through its transparent panels, KL watched the landscape shift from wild crystal formations to cultivated gardens, and finally to a palace that looked like it had been carved from a single enormous prism. Inside, the halls were vast and luminous, lit not by fixtures, but by the walls themselves, which glowed with soft, shifting colors. His boots, worn and practical against the soldiers' silent steps, felt too loud on the smooth floor. They brought him to a throne room that stole his breath despite himself. The ceiling arched hundreds of feet overhead, seemingly made of captured starlight. And there, upon a throne of flowing crystal that appeared both solid and liquid, sat Empress Lidara Vex. She was younger than he expected, perhaps early 30s, with silver-white hair that cascaded over her shoulders and skin that seemed to shimmer faintly, as if stardust ran through her veins. Her eyes were the deep blue of nebulas, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Leave us," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. Her council, advisors in flowing robes positioned around the room, exchanged uncertain glances. "Your Majesty," one began, "protocol, but I am the protocol." Her tone didn't rise, but it carried absolute authority. "Out." When they were alone, truly alone, not even guards remaining, Lidara rose from her throne. She moved with a grace that was almost otherworldly, descending the crystal steps. KL stood his ground as she approached, though everything in him wanted to step back from the sheer presence of her. She circled him slowly, appraising. "You don't bow." "I don't bow to anyone." To his shock, she smiled. It transformed her entire face, softening the austere beauty into something warm and genuine. My advisors would faint if they heard that. When was the last time someone spoke to me without fear? Maybe you surround yourself with the wrong people. Ladara stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint patterns of light moving beneath her skin. Some kind of psychic energy, he realized. Perhaps I do. Her eyes searched his face. Your ship can be repaired. My engineers are the best in 3 sectors. I can't afford. I'm not asking for payment. She tilted her head. But I am asking something. Dine with me tonight. I want to hear about the outer colonies, the places beyond my empire's reach. I want... She paused, vulnerability flickering across her features. I want to speak with someone who sees me as a person, not a crown. KL should have said no. Every instinct he'd honed over years of staying free screamed at him to politely decline, get a ship fixed, and leave. But something in her eyes, a loneliness he recognized from his own mirror, made him nod. One dinner. Her smile returned, brighter this time. One dinner.
The invitation. The dinner was nothing like Kyle expected. He'd imagined a formal banquet hall with dozens of courses and stiff conversation. Instead, a servant escorted him to a private terrace garden where Luminara's twin moons were just rising over the horizon, casting everything in soft silver and pale gold light. Ladara waited at a small table set for 2, and she'd changed from her formal regalia into something simpler, a flowing dress that caught the moonlight like water. "I hope you don't mind," she said as he approached. "I spend enough time in throne rooms." Kyle glanced down at his own clothing, the same worn flight jacket and pants he'd crashed in. "I'm underdressed." "You're honest. That's dressed perfectly for my purposes." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Please." The food was surprisingly simple. Roasted vegetables from the palace gardens, fresh bread, wine that tasted like starlight felt. They ate and talked, and Kyle found himself relaxing despite everything. Ladara asked about his travels with genuine curiosity, not the calculated interest of someone gathering intelligence, but the wonder of someone who'd been confined to one role, one place, for too long. "I've ruled Luminara since I was 19, she said, pouring more wine. "My father died in a border skirmish, and suddenly I was Empress. 12 years of council meetings, treaty negotiations, endless ceremonies." She looked out at her planet's landscape. "I've never seen the outer rim, never walked through a colony market, or slept under unfamiliar stars." "It's not all romance. Mostly it's engine trouble, bad food, and loneliness. And yet you keep flying." "Because it's mine. My ship, my choices, my mistakes." He met her eyes. "No one telling me where to go or who to be." Ladara's expression grew thoughtful. "I envy that more than you know." They walked after dinner, following paths through gardens where flowers bloomed with their own bioluminescence, casting pools of blue and green light. The air smelled like honey and ozone. Kyle noticed how Ladara's shoulders gradually relaxed, how her formal posture gave way to something more natural. "My High Chancellor wants me to marry someone from the Valorian League, a political alliance." She touched one of the glowing flowers absently. "He presents candidates every month, men who want my power, my territory, my resources, never me. So don't marry them." She laughed, but it was tinged with bitterness. "An Empress doesn't have that luxury. Everything is duty, responsibility, the good of the Empire. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people who are terrified of disappointing you, who measure every word, every gesture, who see the crown before they see the woman? Kyle thought about it. Sounds lonely. It is. Her voice was barely a whisper. Unbearably lonely. They stood there in the garden, moonlight painting them both silver. Kyle felt the space between them charged with something he couldn't name. Ladara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint tremor in her hands. I have a proposition for you, she said softly. Stay. Not as a prisoner or a refugee, but as my liaison to the outer colonies. You know those worlds, those people. You could help me understand them, help me make better decisions for regions my advisors barely acknowledge exist. That's not what you really want. The words came out before he could stop them. Ladara's breath caught. No, she admitted. It's not. Her hand reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his. The contact sent warmth rushing through him. The explosion tore through the night. The blast came from the palace's east wing, a plume of fire and debris erupting into the sky. Alarms screamed. Ladara immediately shifted, the vulnerable woman vanishing behind the Empress's mask as she pulled a communication device from her dress. Report, she commanded. A frantic voice crackled back. Attack on the council chambers, Your Majesty. Casualties unknown. Security is responding. Kyle's instincts kicked in. How many guards do you have on you right now? I dismissed them for privacy. Not great timing. He pulled her toward the garden's stone walls. We need to get you somewhere secure. I need to reach my people. You need to stay alive to help them. I've seen enough conflicts to know chaos when it starts. Where's the most defensible position? Ladara's eyes flashed with frustration, but she recognized truth when she heard it. The command center, Northern Tower. They ran through the gardens, Ladara's dress hitched up, both of them racing through shadows. More explosions echoed in the distance. When they reached the tower entrance, guards were already establishing a perimeter, weapons drawn. They ushered Ladara inside, and Kyle followed. The command center was organized chaos, holographic displays showing damage reports, officers coordinating responses. Ladara took command immediately, her voice steady as she issued orders. Kyle watched her transform fully into the ruler her empire needed, commanding and fierce. But when her eyes found his across the room, he saw the woman from the garden still there, beneath the crown. And he realized with sudden certainty that he was already too deep to walk away.
Conspiracy uncovered. For 3 days, the palace remained on high alert. The explosion had killed 2 council members and injured a dozen staff. Investigations turned up evidence of insider involvement, and trust within the imperial administration shattered like crystal under pressure. Kale found himself pulled into the center of it all. Your perspective could be valuable, Ladara explained when she summoned him to a strategy meeting. You think like someone outside the system. He sat in rooms with generals and intelligence officers, watching them present theories and evidence. Most of it was bureaucratic maneuvering and political speculation. But Kale's years running cargo through questionable territories had taught him to spot patterns others missed. It's not an external attack, he said during one late-night session in Ladara's private office. The explosives were too precisely placed, the timing too perfect. Someone knew exactly where to strike and when security would be lightest. Ladara stood at her window, looking out over her wounded palace. I've considered that. Her reflection in the glass looked exhausted. Suspecting my own people is difficult. Who benefits if you're destabilized? Many would benefit if I were dead. Destabilized is more specific. She turned to face him. High Chancellor Torvin has been pushing for more autonomous power for the council. He argues I concentrate too much authority in the throne. Kale pulled up holographic files on the table between them, scanning through personnel records. Has he been acting differently? Meeting with unusual people? He meets with everyone. It's his position. But Ladara moved closer, looking over Kale's soldier at the data. Close enough that he could smell whatever fragrance she wore, something like night-blooming flowers. What are you looking for? Your people think in terms of politics and power. I think in terms of logistics. He isolated financial records. Someone had to acquire military-grade explosives. That requires money, connections, and shipping routes. They worked through the night, Ladara ordering coffee and food brought to her office while they pieced together a trail of carefully hidden transactions. Somewhere around midnight, she kicked off her formal shoes and curled into the chair beside him, both of them hunched over data streams. "Here," Kale said, suddenly highlighting a series of coded transfers. "Look at the timing. These funds move through shell corporations, but they all trace back to accounts Torvin's family controls." Ladara leaned in, her shoulder pressing against his. The contact was electric, even through the exhaustion. "That's not proof of conspiracy. Many families maintain private accounts." "But look where the money goes." He traced the thread further. "Weapons dealers in the free zones. The same ones I've—" He caught himself. "The same ones you've what?" She turned to look at him, their faces suddenly very close. "The same ones I've avoided because they're known to sell to insurgents and rebel groups." He met her eyes. "Your chancellor is arming someone, Ladara. The question is who and why." She sat back, processing. If this is true, if Torvin is behind the attack, her voice hardened. He's committed treason. We need more proof, something undeniable. Ladara's jaw set with determination. Then we'll get it. Over the following days, they became partners in the investigation. Ladara used her authority to quietly access restricted files, while Kale used his knowledge of smuggling networks to track the physical movement of weapons. They spent long hours together, mapping connections, testing theories, growing closer with every shared discovery. One evening, after confirming that Torvin had been meeting secretly with military commanders from rival systems, Ladara collapsed on her office couch, emotionally spent. "How did I not see it? He's been my father's advisor, my advisor for years. I trusted him." Kale sat beside her, close but not touching. "Betrayal is hard to see when you're looking for loyalty." "I'm supposed to be better than this, smarter, more aware. What kind of ruler doesn't notice treason and her own counsel?" "The kind who wants to believe in people." He finally gave in to impulse and took her hand. "That's not a weakness, Ladara." She turned to him, and he saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, the first vulnerability she had allowed since the attack. "I can't show weakness. If the Empire sees me falter, I'm not the Empire. I'm Kale. And right now, you don't have to be Empress. You can just be a person who's hurt and angry and scared. That's allowed." Something broke in her then. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling her shake with silent sobs. They stayed like that for a long time, her crown abandoned on the desk, his flight jacket creased beneath her cheek. "I've never felt safe enough to do this, to just break down. You're safe with me." The words surprised him with their truth. She pulled back just enough to look at his face, her eyes red but clearing. "Why? Why do you care? You could have left days ago. Your ship has been repaired." Kale touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. "Because somewhere between the crash and the conspiracy, you became more than a job or an obligation." He took a shaky breath. "You became someone I can't walk away from." Ladara's eyes widened. Then she closed the distance between them, kissing him with a desperate intensity that spoke of loneliness and longing and finally finding something real. Kale responded in kind, his hand tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ladara pressed her forehead to his. "This is complicated. Everything about this is complicated. If we pursue this, if we're together, it means you can't just leave. You'd be tied to me, to this world, to all the politics and danger that come with being close to the throne." Kale kissed her again, softer this time. "I know. And if we're going to stop Torvin, we're putting ourselves directly in danger. Also aware of that." She smiled despite everything. "You're not making this easier." "When have I ever?" He pulled her closer again. "But I'm here. Whatever comes next, I'm here."
They stayed entwined on that couch till dawn, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding each other, both knowing they'd crossed a line they could never uncross, and neither wanted to.
The choice. The confrontation came faster than either of them expected. Armed with irrefutable evidence, communication logs, financial transfers, and testimony from a repentant weapons dealer Kale had tracked down, Ladara called an emergency session of the Imperial Council. High Chancellor Torvin arrived with his usual confident stride, unaware that his carefully constructed conspiracy was about to collapse around him. Kale watched from the observation gallery as Ladara presented the evidence with cold precision. Her voice never wavered, even as Torvin's expression shifted from confusion to anger to barely concealed rage. When she finished, silence filled the chamber like a held breath. "These accusations are absurd," Torvin finally said, his voice smooth despite the tension in his jaw. "Fabrications from a paranoid ruler who trusts a common smuggler over her own advisors. The evidence speaks clearly. You've been systematically destabilizing my rule to create a power vacuum your allies could exploit. The attack was meant to frighten the Council into granting you emergency powers." Torvin's eyes flickered to the guards positioned around the room, some loyal to him, Kale realized with sudden alarm. The Chancellor's hand moved towards something beneath his robes. "Ladara," Kale shouted from the gallery. Everything happened in fragments of seconds. Torvin drew a compact plasma pistol, illegal within palace walls. Ladara's personal guards moved to intercept. But Kale saw the angle, saw where Torvin was aiming, saw that the guards would be a fraction too slow. He vaulted over the gallery railing. The 15-foot jar jarred every bone in his body, but he was already rolling, already moving. The plasma bolt meant for Ladara's chest caught him in the shoulder instead, the searing pain white-hot and immediate. He crashed into Torvin, both of them going down in a tangle of limbs. Then the guards were there, subduing the Chancellor, and Ladara was beside Kale, her hands pressed against his smoking wound, her face pale with terror. "You idiot! You beautiful, stupid idiot! Still better looking than your Chancellor," Kale managed through gritted teeth before darkness took him. He woke in the medical wing 3 days later. The shoulder was regenerated. Luminaran medical technology was apparently as advanced as everything else, but it ached with phantom pain. Ladara sat in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms at the mattress edge, asleep. She looked exhausted even in sleep, dark circles under her eyes. How long had she been here? As if sensing his gaze, she stirred and lifted her head. When she saw his open eyes, relief flooded her features. "Kale." Her hand found his immediately. "The doctor said you'd be fine, but I needed to see it myself." "Torvin?" "In custody. His co-conspirators are being arrested across the Empire." Her thumb traced circles on his palm. "You saved my life. Seemed important at the time." "Don't joke." Her voice broke. "I watched you fall, watched you get shot, and for a moment I thought—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Kale squeezed her hand. "I'm okay. See? Mostly functional." Ladara stood upright, turning away from him, her shoulders rigid. "I can't do this." Cold dread settled in his stomach. "Can't do what?" "This. Us." She gestured between them without turning around. "You nearly died protecting me. That's what being close to me means. Constant danger, endless threats, always being a target." Her voice was thick with unshed tears. "You deserve freedom, Kale. You deserve to fly wherever you want without worrying about assassins or political conspiracies. Ladara, I'm releasing you from any obligation." She finally turned, and the tears were falling now, tracking down her cheeks. "Your ship is fueled and provisioned. You can leave Luminara and never look back. Find somewhere safe, somewhere far from me and the chaos that follows me." Kale pushed himself upright, despite the protest from his shoulder. He crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. "I love you. Not the Empress, not the crown, not the Empire. You, the woman who laughs at my terrible jokes, who stays up until dawn solving puzzles, who cries when she thinks no one's watching because the weight of her world is too much to bear alone." "KL, you don't understand what you're saying. Being with me means giving up the wandering. I know.
It means staying in one place, being part of something bigger than myself, having responsibilities beyond my own survival. It means danger and politics and probably more people trying to kill me. And I choose it anyway. I choose you. But your freedom was never really freedom. It was just running from connection, from being hurt, from mattering to anyone. His voice grew rough with emotion. You didn't trap me, Ladara. You gave me a reason to stop running. You showed me what it feels like to have a home. She was crying openly now, her hands clutching his shirt. I can't promise it will be easy. I don't want easy. I want real. He kissed her softly. I want you. The council will object. You have no title, no family lineage, no. I have you. If that's enough for you, the council can learn to live with it. Ladara laughed through her tears, a sound of pure joy mixed with disbelief. When did you become so brave? About the time I jumped off a 15-foot gallery to save an Empress. He smiled. Besides, someone has to keep arguing with you. Can't let all those yes men win. She kissed him then, deep and thorough, a kiss that tasted like tears and promises and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling, genuinely, radiantly smiling. Stay, not as an obligation or a duty. Stay because you want to. I want to. I'm staying. Outside the medical wing, beyond the walls, the Empire continued its endless turning. But in that moment, in each other's arms, they had found something neither had expected: completion.
A new horizon. The coronation ceremony, or rather the recommitment ceremony after the conspiracy's defeat, was scheduled for the height of Luminara's summer, when both moons aligned and the crystal canyons sang with harmonic resonance. The entire imperial court gathered in the grand amphitheater, a natural formation where the walls themselves amplified sound and light. Kale stood in the anteroom, tugging at the formal attire that had been made for him. It was a compromise between Luminaran tradition and his own sensibilities, elegant but practical, with fabric that shimmered like starlight but moved like his old flight jacket. He looked, he had to admit, like someone who belonged beside an empress. "You're fidgeting," Ladara said from the doorway. She wore ceremonial robes that flowed around her like liquid moonlight, her hair crowned with a circlet of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. She was breathtaking. "I'm about to stand in front of thousands of people and declare myself your consort. I'm allowed to fidget." She crossed to him, adjusting his collar with a small smile. "You faced down a treasonous chancellor with a plasma weapon. This should be easy. That was instinct. This is—" he gestured vaguely. "Ceremony. Politics. Everything I've spent my life avoiding." Ladara's expression softened. "We can still change this. You could stay without the formal title, without the public declaration. I'd understand." Kale caught her hands, stilling them. "No, I want this. I want everyone to know that I chose you, that I'm choosing this life." He took a breath. "I'm just not used to being the center of attention." "Then focus on me." She touched his cheek. "Look at me, not the crowd. Speak to me, not the empire. It's just us making promises we both want to keep." He leaned into her touch. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You're just now noticing." She kissed him quickly. "Come, it's time." The amphitheater was filled beyond capacity. Citizens from across Luminara and representatives from 100 allied worlds had come to witness their Empress reaffirm her rule after the failed conspiracy. But the real spectacle was the human pilot standing beside her, the commoner who had won the heart of the most powerful woman in 3 sectors. The ceremony proceeded with traditional elements, the recitation of imperial oaths, the blessing of the twin moons, and the presentation of the crystal scepter. Then came the unprecedented part. Ladara turned to face Kale, taking both his hands in hers. The amphitheater fell silent. "Kale Vance," she said, her voice carrying to every corner without amplification, some trick of psychic projection he'd learned she possessed. "You came to my world by accident, a stranger, with no allegiance to my empire.
You owed me nothing. Yet you stood beside me in crisis, challenged me when I needed challenge, protected me at risk to your own life." Her eyes glistened. "And you showed me that strength isn't found in isolation, but in allowing yourself to be truly known." She gestured, and an attendant brought forward a circlet, simpler than her crown, but made of the same living crystal that pulsed with soft light. "I offer you the title of royal consort, with all the responsibilities and privileges it carries. I offer you a place beside my throne, a voice in my councils, a partnership in shaping our empire's future." Her voice dropped, meant only for him, though everyone heard. "But more than that, I offer you my heart, freely given, with no obligation except love." The amphitheater held its collective breath. Kale had prepared words, formal acceptance phrases Ladara's protocol advisor had drilled into him. But standing there, looking into her eyes, he forgot every rehearsed line. "I was lost," he said simply. "For 15 years, I flew through the galaxy thinking freedom meant having no ties, no connections, no one who could hurt me by leaving." His voice grew stronger. "But you taught me that's not freedom. That's just fear with better scenery. Real freedom is choosing where you belong, who you belong with, even knowing it might hurt, especially knowing it might hurt." He took the circlet from the attendant himself, a breach of protocol that made several advisors gasp. "I accept your offer, not because of titles or power or empire. I accept because when I look at you, I finally understand what home means." He placed the circlet on his own head, another breach of protocol. "My heart is yours, Ladara, today and whatever days we're given." The amphitheater erupted, some in shock at the casual ceremony, but most in genuine celebration. Ladara laughed, pure, delighted laughter, and pulled him into a kiss that was decidedly not protocol. The crowd roared louder. When they finally broke apart, both grinning like idiots, Ladara leaned close to his ear. "You just scandalized half my court. Good, they need some excitement. My protocol advisor may faint. Even better." She laughed again, and the sound was worth every stare, every whisper, every breach of tradition. Later, as the celebrations continued in the palace below, they stood on Ladara's private balcony overlooking the crystal canyons. The twin moons were rising, painting everything in silver and gold. Ladara leaned against the railing, Kale's arms wrapped around her from behind. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what you said about seeing the outer colonies, the places beyond my empire's reach. I want to travel, really travel, not just state visits with motorcades and security protocols, but actually see my empire, meet my people, with you. I want you to show me the worlds you've seen, the places that shaped you." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Your council would have a collective stroke." "My council will adjust. I've spent 12 years ruling from a throne room. It's time I understood what I'm actually ruling." Her eyes sparkled with excitement he'd never seen before. "Besides, I have the perfect liaison to the outer colonies, someone who knows every backwater port and smuggling route in 3 sectors. Former smuggling routes," he corrected. "I'm respectable now. You're wearing a crown and you still have grease under your fingernails from fixing your ship last week. You're exactly as respectable as you want to be." She kissed him softly. "Will you show me your galaxy? Our galaxy now." Kale looked at this woman, this Empress, who'd learned to laugh again, who'd chosen vulnerability over invincibility, who'd offered him not just her throne, but her heart. He thought about the drifter's folly repaired and waiting in the palace hangar, about the endless stars beyond Luminara's atmosphere, about all the worlds he'd seen alone that would be transformed by seeing them with her. "On one condition," he said. "Name it. We take my ship sometimes. Not the Imperial cruiser, not the state vessels. My beat-up hauler with the patch thrusters and the temperamental nav computer. Ladara's smile was radiant. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss as the moons aligned overhead, and the crystal canyons below sang their harmonic song. Somewhere in the palace, advisors were probably already worrying about security arrangements and diplomatic implications, but up here, in this moment, there was only the two of them, and the infinite possibilities stretching out like stars. The Wanderer had found his home. The Empress had found her heart, and together they would find their horizon, not bound by it, but reaching toward it, hand in hand. Below them, the Empire celebrated. Above them, the stars waited. And between them, in the space of clasped hands and shared breath, was everything that mattered.